For decades, we've lived with the phrase hot hatch, from the Peugeot 205 and Golf GTIs of the 1980s to the Honda Civic Type R and Ford Focus ST of today. The underlying principle has been simple. Take a normal family hatchback and drizzle it with chili sauce.
The thing is, hot hatchbacks are getting faster and more expensive. So does it even make sense anymore to still call some of them hot hatchbacks? Have we entered the age of the hyperhatch? Okay, you may not like the phrase hyperhatch. Call it what you will. The point still remains, and if there's one candidate that ticks every single one of those boxes from Volkswagen, it's this, the new Golf R.
The new Golf R is the fourth Golf to wear the R badge, and it's based on the Mk8. It's all-wheel drive, has a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine, and uses a double-clutch gearbox. And if all of that sounds familiar, there's a straightforward explanation.
It's because it's the same recipe as the Mk7 Golf R. Mk8, 2-litre engine. Mk7, 2-litre engine. All-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. DSG gearbox, DSG gearbox. So how can the Mk8 be considered a hyperhatch? Well, put simply, it is the fastest, the most advanced, and the most expensive Golf R ever.
First of all, let's look under the bonnet. While the Mk8 has the same engine as the Mk7, the EA888 if we're getting technical, the Mk8 gets the Evo 4 version compared to the old Evo 3. Tweaks throughout mean it isn't just more efficient than before, but produces more power and more torque. Up 20 horsepower to 320 horsepower and up 20 Nm to 420 Nm. Next, there's the all-wheel drive system. As with the Mk7, the Mk8 can shift power forward and aft depending on the situation. New, however, is the ability to send power left to right, not just at the front, but at the rear too. In tandem, the inside wheels are braked while the outside wheels get the beans. There are also 4 drive modes: Comfort, Sport, Race and Individual. And if you pay extra for the R Performance Pack, you'll also get 2 additional sub-modes in Race: Special and Drift.
0 to 62 miles an hour takes 4.7 seconds, and the top speed is 155 miles an hour, unless you opt for the R Performance Pack, in which case that goes up to 167 miles an hour. I know the Golf R is a fast car, you look at it, you know the Golf R's reputation, you know it's going to be quick, but still 4.7 to 62 in a Golf still seems a little bit ridiculous. And the thing is, it feels like it'll do 4.7 to 62 in any condition, any time. It just does it without any real fuss at all. You just bury your foot and you're away. But the thing is, the Golf R has always been able to do that. It's always been quick off the line, it's always been able to do 155. What Volkswagen has tried to do with the Mk8 is make it more enjoyable, more engaging. That's why it's made those changes to the all-wheel drive system, and quite a lot else too.
The spring rates have been upped by 10% all the way round. There's more negative camber at the front. The front subframe is now made from aluminium, saving 3 kilograms, and there's a fruity Akropovich exhaust that will save 7 kilograms. The ride height has been dropped by 20mm compared to a regular Golf, and there's a more direct variable ratio steering rack. The front brakes are bigger too, up from 340 to 357mm.
So have the changes worked? Have they made a more engaging Golf R? Well, on first impressions, I have to say no. Jumping into this for the first time, I just felt a little bit flat. Because when you jump into something like a Honda Civic Type R, you're immediately busy. You've got 3 pedals and a manual gearbox for one thing, something you can't get in a Golf 8. And it's also front-wheel drive, so you've got to work for the performance. Here, you don't get that immediate connection. It's very easy. The car starts off as default in Sport, so you've got quite relaxed steering, quite relaxed suspension, the gearbox, powertrain, everything is just relatively chilled out until you really put your foot down, and then it starts to wake up a bit more. you can slacken things off even further in a comfort mode, and it's really, really chilled out. It's very relaxing. It really doesn't wake up at all unless you absolutely bury your foot to the floor, and even then it kind of feels like it's not entirely happy. But in fairness, that is part of the appeal of a Golf R. You can go very fast with very little effort, and you can also relax in ways that you probably can't in something like a Civic Type R. To really feel what the R is all about, you need to turn things up a notch. In race mode, it isn't just fast and alert, it's entertaining. The steering is responsive and precise, and that precision comes from the changes to the spring rates, to the camber, to the all-wheel drive system. And if you're heading into a corner, you can use the brakes, put more weight on the front end, get the car turned, and then add more throttle, and you can feel it rotate around you as more power goes to the back. It's a weapon. The gearbox, very fast, very effective. New for the Mark 8 are these longer shift paddles that make grabbing a gear just feel a little easier somehow. The only disappointment is the action. It's very non-committal, it's very soft. It's quite difficult to describe, but imagine you're pushing on a marshmallow. That's kind of what it feels like. That aside, things get even better if you go from race mode into special mode, which, as quickly becomes very apparent, was developed at the Nürburgring. The good news is, it isn't a châssis spine mode, which is what I thought it might be. Instead, what it does is keep the whole car at maximum tap mode apart from the dampers. And of course, that makes perfect sense, because if you're on the Nürburgring, what you want is a throttle that responds to your inputs, steering that responds to your inputs, but you want a suspension setup that will soak up the lumps and bumps of the Nordschleife. And on some of our truly bumpy British roads, it works brilliantly. What about drift mode? Well, honestly, it's a mode I haven't particularly enjoyed. Yes, you can get a bit of a squirrel at the rear end, but it's not a very satisfying feeling. When you control some slip in a rear-wheel drive car, there's something very satisfying about the fact that it's your hands, your feet, your brain, your coordination, throttle, everything. You've done it, you've achieved something when you can put a bit of lock on and control a car that's starting to rotate. In this, on the road, it takes care of everything for you. You don't really need to do anything other than put a little bit of lock on and keep your foot planted. Everything else, it takes care of it for you. And I don't know about you, but that's not a particularly gratifying feeling. And driving in drift mode, there's an unusual feeling of rotation. You'll feel like you're turning a lot more than the amount of lock would normally give you. For me, that special mode, that is the mode, that is the sweet spot, because the car will fire you down the road as fast as it can, but it will do it in a way that old Golf Rs couldn't.
The interior, meanwhile, is a very nice place to be. There are the normal Golf 8 irritations, like haptic controls on the steering wheel and touch-sensitive everything for the heater and stereo, but the build quality is unquestionable, and the standard Sardinia design seats incredibly comfortable, very pretty, and as supportive as they need to be. There's a handy R button on the wheel too, which will bring up the drive modes on the 10-inch central display, or with a firmer press, drop you straight into race mode.
So, this has the performance and the technology to justify the Hyperhatch name. It is undoubtedly the fastest and most complicated Golf ever. But what about price? Well, it does quite well there too.
The R starts at £40,025, £3,000 more than the final Mark 7s and nearly £7,000 more than the Mark 6. Add a few options though, and the on-the-road price heads north. Dynamic chassis control, which adjusts the dampers, is £785. The R Performance Pack, which ups the top speed, adds special and drift modes, and brings with it 19-inch alloy wheels rather than 18s, and a bigger rear wing, is £2,000. A panoramic roof is £1,000, a rear view camera £300, and a head-up display £625. The special Akrapovic exhaust? £3,100. The Golf R you see here is £48,705 and 19 pennies.
But in terms of the technology underneath, the performance on offer, and the price, because let's not forget, a regular Golf is £16,000 less than a Golf R. A regular Golf is actually nearly £25,000 less than this Golf R. You could buy 2 Golfs for this. You just can't brand it in the same way you could a Civic Type R or a Focus ST. That's the Golf GTI's job. This takes the Golf to a whole new level.